Hi everyone, and thank you for joining us for today's webcast, your guide to the use of autonomous things in the supply chain. My name is Kaylin Hensley, Marketing Coordinator with GSI. I'm also very pleased to welcome our main presenter, Tom Gabriel. Tom is a Senior Solutions Consultant at GSI and has over 25 years of industry and JD Edwards experience. He has managed implementations, upgrades, business process redesign projects, and more. Tom is very well known in the JD Edwards Oracle community, and he presents at numerous industry conferences and is one of the main presenters for GSI's webcasts and educational workshops. Tom has his Bachelor of Science in Accounting and Business Administration from UConn School of Business. Now, before we get started, I wanted to give you a chance to review our Safe Harbor statement. Now for a quick overview of today's meeting, which will last about 60 minutes. First, we would like to take a moment to go over a couple of housekeeping items, as well as provide a brief company overview. Then we will turn it over to Tom to get into our main presentation and demo, which will last about 40 minutes. Next, we'll take a minute to go over upcoming educational events, and then we'll wrap up with a 10-minute Q&A session. If you would like to submit a question, you can do so through the questions panel at the bottom of the GoToWebinar console window located on the right side of your screen. Please note that questions will be answered at the end of the presentation. So if you would like to minimize your GoToWebinar console during the presentation, just click the right-facing arrow key on the top left of the console. Clicking the left arrow key will return the console so that you can input your questions. And now I'd like to give you a brief overview of GSI. GSI is a full-service JD Edwards consulting organization. We're an Oracle Platinum partner that was founded in 2004 and now have over 100 employees. We have offices nationwide and are recognized on the Inc. 5000 list of fastest-growing companies in the U.S. GSI specializes in project consulting, managed services, and cloud and hosting services, with all of those services backed with a 100% guarantee. GSI also provides a broad spectrum of business, functional, and technical consulting services for Oracle NetSuite, Oracle Cloud, Salesforce, ServiceNow, and other enterprise applications. In addition, we are a product development company that has many popular products, including Genius, which is our advanced monitoring and performance analytics solution for JD Edwards, or any business-critical system on any platform. Genesis is our load stress testing application for system design, validation, or expansion for JD Edwards or any web-based business-critical system. G Shield is our comprehensive security solution for JD Edwards, including password reset and 2FA authentication. Rapid Reconciler, which allows you to effectively manage your inventory in transit, and R&V reconciliation processes for any version of E1 or World. Rapid Approval is a Salesforce App Exchange solution that streamlines the approval request process. And now I'd like to turn things over to Tom for our main presentation and demo.
Thank you so much, Kaylin, and let me know when you can see my screen.
We can see it, Tom.
Thank you so much, and welcome everyone, and thank you for joining us today for this webcast. We're going to talk today about autonomous things and really what they are and how they are affecting and helping the supply chain. So with that, it's important for us to recognize and understand that when we talk about autonomous things, what we're truly talking about is things that are literally existing everywhere. They're also known as AUTs, and they can be things like robots or vehicles or drones, but they're also things like your appliance and your smart stove or refrigerator, or they can even be applications. In effect, an autonomous thing is anything that can be configured and used to perform a task that doesn't require any kind of human intervention. And as I said, they've been an integral and useful part of our society for many, many years, if not decades. When you look at a teller machine where you go up and withdraw money, where you look at automatic thermostats to turn on and off, air conditioning or heat or things of that nature. You think about automatic lights when you walk down the hall and they turn on and, you leave and after a few minutes they turn off. Or cruise control in a car or autopilot in planes. There have been many, many autonomous things that have been out there in our society for many years. But now we're getting a proliferation of those things. Now we're getting things like the Roomba vacuum, and we're getting collision avoidance in cars, and our smartwatches that can monitor heart rates and tell us how far we've walked. Doorbells that can see and send text messages when people, come up to our house. All of these new things are wreaking havoc in our world and causing a major disruption in the supply chain and businesses. So on the one hand, while they're performing value and they're helping individuals for certain degrees within the supply chain, they truly are beneficial but causing disruption. So what we want to be able to do is we want to understand that within the supply chain, you are going to be able now to do more broader applications and work with the use of these autonomous things. And when we talk about the supply chain, robotics is by far the #1 technology that's affecting our supply chain. 1,100 manufacturing and supply chain people were solicited, and 65% of them said that robotics is changing their business and changing the way they do things. So based upon those people that have been surveyed, they're also saying that these autonomous things are causing disruption in their organization, but at the same time, they're driving the growth of their business, and they're creating, the best part, a competitive advantage of their organization to other people and other organizations within their industries. So it's a very difficult thing for us to understand when we talk autonomous things and when we talk about how they affect us in the supply chain. There is a proliferation of these things that we have to understand what are the best ones that we should implement and we should use within our supply chain process. So if we look at the framework of autonomous things, the first thing I want to point out before we even discuss this slide is the fact that without the Internet of Things, without IoT, there would be no thing called autonomous things. The Internet is a major component, and the Internet of Things is a major component of autonomous things. So if we're talking robotics or vehicles or appliances or some other agent, and it doesn't matter what type of environment we're talking about, be it land, sea, air, or digital, we have to understand that what autonomous things are doing is they're either replacing or assisting human beings. They're either giving full or partial automation or some type of conditional automation within our supply chain. And they're either fully autonomous and working 24/7 on their own, or they need some degree of intervention. Now, they can be isolated pieces of equipment, just doing their own thing on their own. They can get information or guidance from people or be totally independent. They can be connected to other systems and things, and i.e. be collaborative, i.e. swarms, working together to do something. And the easiest example of the swarms is when you looked at the opening ceremony for the Olympics recently, how all the drones were flying throughout the stadium and doing whatever they were doing. So they're also some type of intelligence. They're either rogue doers, i.e. dumb, and they're just doing repetitive tasks, or they can have some intelligence built in and, again, take guidance or learn to grow on their own or work together as a hive to accomplish a goal. So when we talk about autonomous things, we have to understand that it's not just the supply chain, even though today we're going to talk about how they're affecting the supply chain process. So the biggest users of autonomous things by far have been the automotive industry. And over the last 8 years, the industry has grown 16% due to the use of autonomous things. Now, we all know about Amazon, and the picture on the right is just a picture of one of their warehouses. But Amazon utilizes over 100,000 smart robots in all of their fulfillment centers to go and pick product and return product to the actual human who's going to put it in the box. Now, with Amazon, that helped reduce their operating expense by over 20%. And it shortened the time for someone to pick and pack the product from 60 to 75 minutes down to 15. So you can see how productivity went up. They're able to take more orders, fill more orders, have higher client satisfaction, and things of that nature. Now, when we talk about Major, which is a food and supermarket chain throughout the United States, they've built a fully automated warehouse in Wisconsin. And that warehouse literally uses robots to take a pallet off of a truck, bring that pallet to a pallet storage unit, and when they need to fulfill orders, it'll actually take the pallet down, break the pallet apart, identify all the components within the pallet, restore those on various other stocking shelves, and then pick whatever they need to pick and pack it, all using robotics. The only thing a human is used for is to pick up the pallet that was shrink wrapped, and put that on the truck. So when we talk Gartner, when we talk about Deloitte, when we talk about all these other organizations that have done studies, they've shown that if you use an autonomous thing in the warehouse, that you can increase your picking rate upwards of 300 picks an hour versus an average 60 to 80 when it's done by a human being. So again, that type of technology, that type of use within a warehouse is a very important thing. So what are the top autonomous things, i.e. robotics? What are the top things that they do? I told you picking, packing, and sorting. That's basically the lion's share of what they do. Unloading, loading, stacking is another area. But again, lesser on the food chain is receiving and put away and assembly operations. And when we talk other robotics, and we're going to talk the different kinds in a second, they're also used to do welding and cutting and painting and things like that, i.e. the automotive industry using robotics to put a car together. So what are the various types of robotics that are used in warehouses and factories? You have what's called an automated storage retrieval system. That's what Major uses when they do all of their, from the truck all the way down to when it's picked, packed, and shipped out again. Then you have things called automated guided vehicles. There's also autonomous mobile robots. And then there's the articulated robotic arms. All of these play a part in your supply chain process. So if we look at each one of these separately, my automated storage and retrieval system, and the picture on the right shows you that warehouse I was alluding to. That pallet comes in, and that pallet is actually just stored in total in these humongous racks. And then as they need product, a robot goes, grabs the pallet, pulls it down, takes all the components off of the pallet, and then sorts them and puts them back on other racks that they call picking racks, that they then will go in and pick the product. So it's automatically depositing and retrieving items from high capacity storage locations. And it's sometimes, again, referred to as a goods to person fulfillment system, simply because nobody is doing anything except the robot until it gets to the forklift guy to put it on a truck. So there's various systems. There's fixed aisle systems where the aisles are always what they are. There's horizontal or vertical carousels, vertical lift modules, any number of things. But I would suggest you go to YouTube, and I would suggest you look up Major, MEIJER, and look up the YouTube video on their fully automated warehouse in Wisconsin, and you'll be amazed to see how very little human intervention is required in that operation. When we talk about automated guided vehicles, the first one I ran across easily was 15, 20 years ago when I was working, consulting at a client. And as I walked in the building, I noticed that they had these blue lines on their carpeting, and I had no clue what those blue lines were for. And throughout the day, all of a sudden, I saw a robot come by to deliver all the hard mail. So instead of having an individual from the mailroom stopping at every location to drop off the mail, they had a robot that would go through the office and literally stop at each one of the locations for people to go and deposit or grab the mail. So these type of vehicles, they have a preset route. Normally you'll see them with the yellow and black lines like you do right there on the slide. That route, the robot follows that route using some type of marker or wire or sensor. And again, in the warehouse, it's going to be something that normally would be done by a forklift operator, i.e. moving things from one area to another. So those are automated guided vehicles. Now, that 15, 20 years ago has progressed now to what's called an autonomous mobile robot. And what these are robotics that literally now have intelligence, because they can be programmed or they can have sight and understand how to navigate throughout their environment. So they don't need that guideline or wire on the floor. They don't need to have a preset route. They are literally using sensors and software and maps to work with their organization within their organization. Now, I don't know how many of you may have been at the hospital recently, but a lot of them are used in hospitals. They're delivering the food at the end of the day to all the patients, or they're bringing some of the, medicine and things of that nature. But again, the big difference here is they're thinking now. Now they're actually learning and being able to work themselves where they need to go. If we look at the next one, we are all familiar with this articulated robotic arm. We've seen images of this. We've seen them in the automotive industry. They're robotic arms that have 2 or more joints that can bend and twist and perform a variety of functions. They can even pick some things up or be mounted with different types of, end units so that they can grab or spray or paint or anything of that nature. They can also help with palletizing and depalletizing, welding and painting. But one of the things people don't realize is how many of these now are used in surgery. Recent advances in surgery, you can go in now and your operation is literally done by robotics, with your doctor just looking at a screen and guiding the robotics to where it has to go. So again, advances not necessarily just helping the supply chain, but advances helping society in general and alleviating a lot of the mundane things that people had to do. What else is there now? What about a robotic exoskeleton that's being developed that's going to allow your factory worker to be able to lift more weight, to be able to move more things while reducing any kind of injury or accident? Now, again, getting back to the medical field, how many of you have seen robotic, exoskeleton suits used to help people with injuries to their, legs, paralysis, things of that nature, helping them get moving again? So all of this is creating a huge, huge business that they predict is going to hit $70 billion within the next 5 years. And what that shows me is several things. Number one, it shows me that technology is not resting, technology is not stopping, and that us as an organization, if we don't turn around and we don't start looking at these things and identifying where they can help our business, we're going to fall behind. So this 70 billion that's going to be created, again, the lion's share is going to be within the automotive industry, but that's going to be closely followed by the electronics industry. Now, it's sad to see that within the globe, those countries that are investing in this type of technology and the use of this technology, unfortunately, the United States is fourth on the list of 5. And we can all understand that China, Japan, and South Korea, the way they've approached technology and advances in technology over the last decade, it would make sense that they're leading the way. So when we look at technology, when we look at uses of robotics, especially in the supply chain and manufacturing and distribution, over the last 5 years, it's caused sales to increase by over 114%. So now let's ask ourselves a question. Okay, yes, we know that we have robotics in the automotive industry. We know we have things that can pick product and deliver product like Amazon in the warehouse and things of that nature. But what other types of technology are happening out there in the world? What other things, are going to drive us as an organization to become more efficient in the supply chain? Well, it's going to be autonomous vehicles. It's going to remove ourselves from just using that one autonomous device within our building to using an autonomous vehicle to deliver our product, to help us get to the market, provide to other markets our goods and our services. So when we look at organizations that naturally build these automotives and trucks and things like that, you can see that the top makers, i.e. the Volvos and the Fords and the Tesla, they've invested a lot of money over the last 5 years developing technology that's going to help vehicles become more autonomous. And if you ask McKinsey and Company, they predict that within 8 years, the United States will start using fully autonomous trucks in the United States. Now, when I say fully autonomous, I mean there will not be a human in the actual truck. It will have no human in it, and it will be driving itself to wherever it needs to go. Now, why might that be important to us in the supply chain? It's important to us because it's going to help lower costs in my supply chain, because now organizations are expected to get leaner and leaner and leaner. They're expected to collaborate more with their suppliers, be able to provide the goods and services to their customers quicker and more efficiently. So when we look about the lowering of costs, naturally the biggest reduction is going to be in the operation of the actual truck. And that's going to be due to the fact that you're not going to need as much labor. Now, that's going to sound like an oxymoron when I turn around and explain to you in a bit the fact that while it will reduce labor costs because of the increase in demand and the increase of us having to get things and move things around, truly the demand for more labor is going to go up. There's going to be a reduction in fuel consumption by maybe as much as 18%, because in the future, supply chain organizations are going to use what's called platooning to deliver their goods. And what platooning is, it's having 2, 3, 4 trucks all following the same route, all following each other. So we've all heard about drag, and we know in NASCAR they follow each other so that they can conserve fuel. It's the same concept in the supply chain. Having 2 or 3 trucks following each other so that the first vehicle is consuming the most where the other 2 are consuming less. That's also going to lead to a reduction in my emissions by up to 60%. And they predict that accidents are going to go down 90 to 95% because they found that most of them are caused by human error. And because accidents are going to go down, we're going to save money on insurance costs in my supply chain. So net, all of this looks like a good thing for me if I'm able to use an autonomous vehicle. But again, you're going to see that while we are going to get rid of drivers, it's going to help alleviate the shortage that there is today in finding drivers. So net, they predict that everything should flush out and become a positive. So that's great. I'm going to have an autonomous car, an autonomous truck, but there's things we need to worry about. The biggest concern is everything is going to be via computer, via software. What's going to stop a hacker from just getting into that, infiltrating the software, stealing the vehicle or maybe causing harm by doing something else? The other big concern that all of those Volvo and Daimler and other companies are struggling with now is the fact that there's very few regulations or laws. Today, you can sue the trucker, or you could sue the trucking company that hired the truck driver, or you could sue the company that hired the trucking company and driver. But when we get to these fully autonomous vehicles, who are we going to sue? Who has the liability? Is it the liability on the software manufacturer of the software? Is it the liability to the person that wrote the guidance system and how to interpret the rules and drive? And as is everything in the United States, there's a big disconnect between each state and the fact that the federal government really has no bills that are enforceable for liability. So there's hurdles that we have to work through in order for this to happen. So because of all of the concerns that have happened and because of the unfortunate deaths, with Uber and some others, these software manufacturers, vehicle manufacturers, they have to go back to the drawing board and they have to make that software, make that vehicle more, fine-tuned to look at things like weather and lighting and things like that. Another obstacle in getting there is the fact that our infrastructure, we need to upgrade our infrastructure in order for this to happen. Now, right now, we do use autonomous trucks in the U.S., but they're more out in Texas and the Midwest and areas of California. where there's long open highways that are relatively free of any kind of other major things. So, you know, they're being tested and they're being utilized today, but I don't see Chicago, I don't see New York City, Philadelphia, I don't see any major metropolitan area having autonomous vehicles in the relatively near future. Now, another concern that we're facing when it comes to any type of autonomous thing in the supply chain or the workforce is the fact that if the technology starts to get too complicated for the average person, people may not get enamored with it and people may shy away and avoid buying or utilizing these things. So there's a fine line that's drawn between the use of autonomous things and not. So when we talk about the supply chain, we talk about, you know, autonomous things, there's barriers. How do you as a company in your supply chain make a business case? You're not going to go out and make your warehouse fully automated and think about doing it all right away. You're going to take baby steps and start small. And then once you get your toe in the water, you're then going to start growing quicker. So you have to define what you need to do versus not doing, and what's going to happen if you don't do anything. And you also have to look at what is the important thing to your customers today. You're not going to go and implement something today that has no relevance to your customer. It would be a waste of good money. You want to make sure that your customer demands are satisfied by what you adopt. The other barrier is people. There is a lack of people that could understand this technology and use this technology. As George Press said, we don't need people anymore that move the boxes. We need people that understand the movement and the robots who move them, analyzing that data from moving the box. And the last major constraint, how do you build trust with your customers, with your suppliers regarding security of data in an always-on supply chain? How can you ensure them that data and privacy and things of that nature, that you have an organization that can handle all that? So we've talked about some of the things in use in the supply chain. What do we need to do to be innovative? We need to explore what devices can be used, what devices we need to put in place. We need to educate, engage, and create ideas within the senior leadership of our organization. And we have to understand what is strategically relevant for us so that we can augment or automate human activity. We need to develop and deploy a mix of things so that we can gather the full benefit of a virtual, augmented, or mixed reality world. We need to understand that IoT is at the forefront of everything that's happening, and we have to start embracing that and supporting that type of technology. And we have to learn and monitor what is happening in the technology arena. How is it going to affect me at the beginning of its life cycle? We can't wait until it's fully mature to then adopt it, because once it's fully mature, it's being enhanced. So we have to understand what is currently being worked on now, evaluate and embrace it, and do it now versus waiting. And we do that by identifying the problems where they exist and which ones are going to get us the greatest return. So Gartner says that these strategic trends, they're not widely recognized yet, but they have a great industry impact and a very significant potential for disruption. And they feel that through 2023, another 5 years, they're going to reach a level of maturity that actually crosses a critical tipping point within society. They suggest that you examine the impact of all these trends and seize those that are going to enhance your products or create new ones or create new business models. And you need to prepare for the impact that outside digital business is going to have on your industry. So again, just some quick analytics. In a survey that was conducted in 2018, you can see that sensors and automatic identification, Internet of Things, robotics, and automation out of the top 5, there are 3 of the top 5, and all 3 of them are over 85% expected to impact the supply chain. When we look at adoption rates in green through 2018, these are the areas of automation that people adopted. But look at wearables and mobile technology. Look at IoT. Look at robotics and automation. They're all going to more than double within the next 5 years, their adoption rate. When we talk about the challenges, we talked about workers, right? And we talked about customers. And we talked about competition and behavior. 4 of the top 5 have to do with your people and or your customer. And you can see that it's expected that there's going to be a large disruption to your business in trying to meet the goals of those areas. So some of the barriers when we talk about robotics and automation, the largest one is making a business case, 25%. When we talk about driverless vehicles and drones in the lower left-hand corner, again, it's making the business case for that. When we talk about the Internet of Things, the business case for that is 36%, where the technology is 36%. So you can see that in all these areas, the business case is one of the largest areas, and barriers. Making that business case is the largest barrier to organizations. So again, customer demand and getting highly qualified workers, what do you do to negate that? What do you do to minimize that? You try to work with a vendor that understands the benefits. You try to find your people that have the skill sets that are going to align with your future needs. You need to invest in training so that people can understand the technology that's being brought to the forefront. And most importantly, you need to understand that it's going to cost money. So you need to start investing and increasing your budgets for this technology. So again, technology that's disrupting or creating competitive advantage, again, you can see robotics, Internet of Things, sensors, 3 of the top 4. And you can see that more than 55% agree that it's going to cause great disruption or cause great competitive advantage to their businesses. So when we look at this study, you can see that in use today, some form of robotic or automation is used in 30% of the people that were solicited. Over the next 1 to 2 years, another 19%. So 50% of those people that have been solicited will use some form of robotics or automation. If we go out to 3 to 5 years, that's 75%. And if we look, again, the most common uses today: picking, packing, loading, unloading, receiving, and put away, right? Again, the majority of the processing, welding, painting, cutting, that's from, the automotive industry and assembly operations. But again, picking, packing, loading, unloading, that mundane operation within the warehouse. You talk to your executive, what do they care about? They care about the hacker. They care about the security of the systems and the devices, right? They also care that the people in their organization, especially those in the supply chain, truly don't know what their issues are. So if we look at the top four, it has to do with some type of security and some type of awareness and understanding. We have to start educating ourselves as to how we can make our operations more efficient. This is what the supply chain looks like today. A very linear approach. Somebody says, I need something. Farmers go out, they grow it, then they take it and give it to an aggregator who does processing to it, ships it to the wholesaler or restaurant, ultimately to the retail consumer. Very linear operation. But yet when we start throwing in autonomous things and we start throwing in IoT and some other technology, you're going to see that in the future, your supply chain now, it's going to be wide open. Anybody being able to talk and see and do things with anyone else. And that's what you have to position your organization for. You have to be able to understand the people you're getting goods and services from, what type of inventory do they have, what is their lead time, how is it going to affect your orders, how is it going to affect your delivery schedule, especially if you have to, you have a new customer now in Alaska that you have to ship things through to. So you have to understand all of that information. So this research was done, and as you can see, the people that were solicited, over 60% or almost 60% were some type of manufacturer or service provider. And when we look at that, we can see that, again, over 50%, the businesses were less than 500 million in revenue. So we're not talking, companies that make billions of dollars a year. We're talking smaller organizations were the ones solicited about automation in the supply chain. And of those organizations talked to, you can see that a fair amount, i.e. 80%, are going to spend upwards of $5 million to get themselves in a position to utilize autonomous things in their workforce. Again, these companies were mostly North American companies, and of the global organizations, the majority of those global organizations had North American operations. So this is not a study of those other countries that are investing heavily in technology. This was a study done of US-based organizations primarily and how they see autonomous things in the supply chain. And when they talk to these people, you can see that there was a fair mix across the board of the organization, with 34% of them being managers or engineers within their organization. So it's not like we didn't solicit people that understood the supply chain and what it meant. These are people that literally work in the supply chain and understood the constraints that they had in their organization. And when we look at industries, you can see that by far the largest industries were material handling and supply chain equipment. And then you can see the fourth one, transportation and warehousing. So again, this is data that's indicative of people and organizations that are experiencing the pain and the problem. So, what are we going to invest in over the next 3 years? Again, you can see all of this, easily the top 10, top 12, are all things to do with the warehouse, with the moving of inventory, with the shipping of inventory. I'm going to say easily the top 20, right? And you can see over the next 3 years the amount of investment organizations are going to make. So again, when we talk autonomous things, you have to understand the sweet spot you want to be in. If you look at the X and Y axes, right, your investment in automation versus the labor that's required, you want to be able to hit that sweet spot where your labor and automation mix is on that one path for increased operational efficiency. That's what you need to analyze. That's what you need to understand in your business to determine what type of automation you need to put in the supply chain. So in closing, if we look, IoT is the backbone of everything. Artificial intelligence, simply because of the amounts of data that people are getting from this Internet of Things, and then the robotics to act on that information. You can see that the top three things account for 50% of the drive for business transformation, the indispensable consumer technology, and driving the greatest benefit to my society, life, and environment. So they all work together, all work hand in hand, but it's all driven by the Internet of Things. So this information was provided by Gartner. It was also provided by Deloitte and KPMG, and it was provided by the MHI Annual Industry Report, MHI being the largest organization of material handling organizations in the United States. So hopefully that helps you understand that as an organization, you need to look at your business, you need to look at technology, you need to look at getting the biggest bang for your investment dollar based upon the consumer and supplier that you're dealing with. So with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Kaylin, and then we'll go from there.
Thanks, Tom. Now I'd like to cover a few follow-up items, and then we'll move to our question and answer section of the webcast. Our webcast today is part of GSI's free ongoing educational webcast series on JD Edwards. Our upcoming webcasts are listed on the screen. To view our most up-to-date schedule, please visit www.getgsi.com/webcasts. GSI provides extensive free educational resources for the JD Edwards community, including our weekly educational webcasts, monthly newsletter called the GSI Insider, online resource center where you can access our on-demand webcasts, white papers, etc., and on-site and virtual workshops. If you would like to sign up for our weekly email reminders for upcoming webcasts, our monthly newsletter, or to create an account to access our resource center, go to getgsi.com, go to Platforms on the main menu, select JD Edwards, and then select the appropriate link on the left. All right. And I would like to remind everyone that if you would still like to submit a question, you can do so using the questions panel in the GoToWebinar console window on the right side of your screen. If you minimized your console earlier, please click the left arrow to display the questions panel. I see that our main questions are regarding whether or not there's going to be a follow-up with this webcast. The answer is yes. You're going to receive an email after the webcast where you're going to have the access to our resource center, and you will be able to see this on demand, and you will also be able to see the presentation.
If I may, Kaylin, also.
Yes.
Mention to people that we will be doing future webinars that supplement this, talking about things like artificial intelligence and other technology trends that are all bundled together and work together within the supply chain. The other thing I'd like to mention and let you know is, for those of you that might use JD Edwards or NetSuite, that we will be at the conferences later on in April. So if you happen to go to one of those conferences, please feel free to look us up and we can talk further about any of your concerns.
Absolutely. Thank you, Tom. As a follow-up from today's webcast, we ask that you complete a short 1-minute survey when you exit. You will be receiving an email with a link to our resource center on our website, where you can access the recording from today's webcast as well as a copy of the presentation. After today's webcast, we will do the drawing for the $25 Amazon gift card, and anyone who attended the entire webcast will be eligible, and we will notify the winner. Thanks again for attending our presentation, and have a great day.
Kaylin, thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Tom.